Welcome. We have, obviously, I love doing breakfast Sundays. It's always some of my favorite good, yummy food. Thank you to everybody who brought that. And here in just a little bit, we have something we're going to give away, which is always exciting. So I'm going to teach, hopefully not quickly, but quickly at the same time, because I want to take just a minute to really kind of lay this out for you a little bit. So I don't want to take too much time, but at the same time, I also want to give it enough time to maybe let it kind of soak in a little bit. So I do want to talk about today, lo and behold, the importance of community. This obviously being the Sunday that we celebrate Valentine's Day coming up here, so hopefully all of you who have somebody to celebrate with, you can have a wonderful time. And even if you don't have somebody to celebrate with, hopefully you still manage to have a really fun time anyhow. But I want to just kind of start off this morning by telling you that God never designed for you to go through life alone. One of the things that in all of the wedding ceremonies and stuff that I have done, one thing that I will oftentimes bring up is that in the very beginning when God created Adam, and Adam was tending the garden and he had dominion over the earth and he was doing the things that God had asked him and kind of directed him to do. Throughout that time, God looked down and he said something that I think is really very interesting. So he said that it's not good that man should be alone. So God looked at Adam just by himself and he's like, you know what, this isn't good. This arrangement, this setup is not good because he's alone. And so what he did then is he creates Eve so that Adam can have a partnership. And so obviously us going forward, that's why we can use that pattern and we can look ahead and say, God really never created or intended us to do this alone. Right. And so throughout that process of God even looking at Adam and saying it's not good that he's alone, you do know that he wasn't actually alone because God was there fellowshipping with him every day. The Bible says that God came down and he fellowshiped with him in the cool of the day, and that was a normal process. So it was just him and God, but yet God said it's not good that he's alone. So I want you to think about that. So number one, if you've ever heard or maybe wrestled with the belief that relationship in church is not important, God kind of did away with that right off the bat because he said it was just you and me, but that's not good enough because I don't want you to be alone. Does that make sense? Yeah. That's not really what I'm talking about today, but kind of a little nugget for you in that truth is that just you and God, that's not really enough. He wants you to be with other people. That was the design from the beginning because it's not good that you're alone. And so he created us for fellowship and he created us for communion. And as I'm talking today about your community and why community is important, your community can be your family, your friends, your church family. It can be made up of any number of people. But what I want to stop and kind of think about and talk about for just a few minutes this morning is what is it that your community encourages you to do? And vice versa, what is it that you encourage your community to do? Because if community and if fellowship is important, then we need to understand why it's important and how that plays into our lives today. So Hebrews chapter 10, I'm going to just throw a couple of verses at you. We're going to talk about these, maybe even in a way that you haven't really given a lot of thought to. I've brought up these verses several times in the past and never really stopped to look at some of the wording that's actually in there to really give it some thought. But Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 24, I have heard these sections of verses many times in my life, but hopefully going to show you something that's maybe a little bit different than what you've maybe heard before. Verses 24 and 25, it says, "And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching." Now, we do know historically what's going on here, that they're talking about, especially as the time that Jesus prophesied that came to fulfillment in 70 AD, as that was getting closer, he was reminding them to encourage each other, okay? And he was reminding them not to forsake the gathering of themselves together because it was important. There was some really big and bad stuff that was about to happen, and the writer of Hebrews is saying, make sure that you don't forget to do that because it's important, all right? But I want to back up to verse 24 for a second. And this is in context of our community. It says, let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. Now, that word consider, actually, one of the words that could fit there is actually the word perceive. So let's perceive one another. Or let's consider. If I were to say, if my wife and I were making a decision, and then I said, but we need to consider the kids, what does that mean? That means I have to think about what it is that we're deciding, how it affects them. Right? That means if I said, we should do this, and Brittany's like, well, yeah, but consider what the church, or consider your schedule, or consider our money, or whatever it might be, right? What that means then is there's a decision that needs to be made, but you need to stop and perceive, or stop and maybe understand how that's going to affect your money, your church, your kids, whatever it is, right? And so this verse is telling us, and let us consider one another. Okay, so it becomes important for every single one of us then to stop and perceive or stop and understand what it is that I'm going to do, how it's going to affect you. Right? It's not just about me. It's not just I have this desire and I want to do this and I like doing this and you can jump in if you want, and if you're mad at me, I don't really care. Look, if I'm going to consider you, that means that how this affects you is important. Right? So if I have, and I could use any number of examples here, and I'm going to, for the sake of time, kind of let you think of the examples for this, but in anything that I do, what I should be doing is considering you. Okay? Now, understand, I want you to get this. If my wife and I are considering buying a new car, I mean, I appreciate what your opinion is, but I kind of don't care, right? I mean, unless I specifically come to you and say, what do you think of this car, Chris? And Chris is going to be like, that's a stupid idea. And I'd be like, thanks, Chris, right? Now, but you understand what I'm saying is there are certain things that they don't affect you, right? But what I'm about to do really has no bearing in your life. But I can still stop and consider you in the process, right? And so I'm not talking about just simple little things that maybe it's just going on at home. But what I am saying is there are a lot of things in our own lives that maybe we even put on Facebook. Oh, here we go. We put on Facebook or we do whatever that we don't really stop to consider how this might actually affect the people in our community, our friends, our church family, whatever, right? In the middle of the things that we've been going through, of course, we have somebody get on Facebook and he's like just being being obstinate, being difficult for really no reason. We're like, are you serious right now? Like in the middle of everything that's going on, you have to just be difficult? What's the point? Right? Now, you might be right. Maybe you have a point. But saying it like you're being a jerk. Yeah. Right? Guys, I can give you any number of examples of various things. But what I'm saying is, as we go through life, it's important that we actually stop and consider one another. It's time that we actually just... Best example I can give you. On my Saturday, on the days that I have off, and we've been running like crazy... And it's actually Pastor Cindy's turn to preach, but we traded, so she gets to do it next week, so she gets a little bit extra time to be ready. But on Thursday, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to preach. Well, guess what I wanted to do yesterday? I didn't want to sit down and prepare for this. I'm just being honest with you. I had other things I would have loved to be doing at that time. But if I'm going to consider you, then aren't you worth me taking my time to prepare something so I have something to give you? Yeah. Right? Thank you for that. But that's how some of even our little decisions can impact and affect one another. And so I think I've made that point. So if I am supposed to consider you, if I am supposed to perceive how the things I do affect you, then what is it that I should be trying to stir in you? What is it that I should be trying to grow on the inside of you? Well, the first thing is to stir up anger and politics and... It's not in my Bible. It's okay if you say that's not right. No, what I should be doing is I should be trying to stir up in you love. That's the number one thing that I should be trying to stir in you. Now look, I've got my own politics. You guys, if you see me on Facebook, you typically don't see that kind of stuff. It's not because I don't have opinions on it. It's because, quite frankly, that's really not the forum to discuss it in my mind. You can disagree with me, and that's fine, but this is what I want to do. I don't want to give anybody a reason to, when they see my name on Facebook, scroll past it. That's just me. You can see that differently, and that's okay. But I'm just telling you that, for me, What I want to do and what I want to put out there are things that might stir you to love. And when we preach, that's what we want to do, is to stir you to love. So the things that I do and the things that the ways that I'm trying to stir you are trying to get you to a place where you love deeper and you love stronger. Now the second thing is that I also should be trying to stir up in you good works. Those two things kind of go hand in hand, because when I really love something or really love someone, that means that I'm going to do certain things, and those are going to be good things for that person or for those people. Let me just give you an example. If I love the church, I will give to it. Why? Because I want it to exist so that we can gather together, right? I want the lights to be on. I want the heat to be running, right? So I will give my money, which is a good work, because what I'm giving to is the ability for all of us to gather together, to encourage each other, to strengthen each other. It's not just giving for the sake of me feeling good because I'm giving something. It's me giving and sowing into each and every person who is sitting here, because it gives you the opportunity to come and soak up and be encouraged to love and good works, right? So me stirring you is part of that, is me actually doing something, like giving. Okay? Here's another one. If I'm going to love you and try to encourage you and stir you to good works, if I love you enough, then you know what I'll do is I'll get here at 9 o'clock, or 9:05 usually, I admit, 9:05, and we'll practice music before service starts every week. Why? Because we don't really want it to sound like trash. We want it to sound good, right? And I'll shovel the sidewalk when I get here. Right? So, and you guys, whatever it is that your portion is, I'm not just saying this for me, what I'm saying is, these are things I can tell you that because I have love for this church and because I have love for you, because it's so important to me, I'm willing to do those things. Yeah. Right? I'm willing to maybe go an extra mile beyond what I would prefer to do because I love. Okay, parents, do you ever feel like getting up at 3 in the morning when your kid just barfed all over the floor? It doesn't really happen like that. Nowhere at any point you're like, I am so glad you woke me up covered in throw up, right? That is never how it feels. But what do? Because you love your child, and because you can't go to sleep until you clean it up anyways, like, what do? You get up at 3 in the morning, you wash them down, you put them in the tub, you put all their sheets in the washer, whatever it is you do, you clean up the mess on the floor, you then feel like you have to go throw up and clean yourself up, right? And then you get everything cleaned up, you put them back to bed, and the last thing before you fall asleep again is you pray to God, they're not going to come and get you in the next 2 minutes, right? So, but why do you go through all of that? Why are you okay with doing that stuff? You're okay with doing it because you love. Yeah. Right? So I can give you any number of examples, but I taught this a long time ago, but sometimes you will find love in your ability to say no to something that is put in front of you. If I know that what we're about to do is going to cause you to stumble, or it's going to be hard for you to deal with, or it's going to potentially mess you up, I have to take responsibility and say, I love you enough not to do it in front of you or with you. I'm just going to give you a really good example, because we have some really good people in our lives, and I remember we were out to dinner with some preacher friends of ours, and the one asked the other one, because of who was sitting at the table, would it be okay if I got, I don't remember what it was, some kind of alcoholic drink? And the other preacher's like, you know what, probably not. If you did it, it probably would kind of make for this whole ordeal. And they're like, okay, that's cool, I'm fine with that, and they ordered water or something. Well, but I'm free to get whatever I want. Yeah, you are, except stop and think about everything that we do should be motivated by love. And I can't say I love you if I can look you in the eye and say, I don't care how this makes you feel. Right? If I can look you in the eye and say, you know, it doesn't really bother me. If you don't like it, get over it. That's actually a problem with me. That's not a problem with you. That's my issue. Does that make sense? So my goal and what we should be trying to do as a community, and when I say community, again, I'm talking about the way you're raising your children. I'm talking about the way you deal with your family, the way that you interact with your church family. It's all the same. But we should be encouraging to stir each other to love. And we should be encouraging each other to grow in good works. and doing the right things and doing the good things. See, the Bible actually says, I think it's in the book of Proverbs, that bad company corrupts good morals. Why? Because the more you put yourself in that situation, the more that you allow yourself to be pulled in, sucked into that, the more you're like, okay, a little bit of this is okay. Then you find that you're doing a lot of this, and then a lot more of this, and all of a sudden you're like, I didn't even mean for it to go this far, and now here I am, doing whatever, right? And I never even really intended it to go that far, but yet here we are. That's why it's important that we have each other around to maybe sharpen each other a little bit. When we're in relationship and we can see that somebody's going through something or doing something really stupid, guys, we have to be able to say to each other like, hey man, listen, this is not a good idea. Or that was kind of out of line. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be talking like this. You got to make better decisions. Whatever it is. We've got to be able to do that. Because you know who you irritate more than anybody in the world? Your family. The people that you're closest to, right? That's who you irritate the most. Why? Because you're together all the time, right? So you have all kinds of opportunity to just rub each other the wrong way. And the best part is sometimes you learn how to rub them the way that they really don't like, and you do it just because. Right? And so we have this way of rubbing each other the wrong way and irritating each other, especially family, more than anybody else. And church family is the same way. One of the things that I have learned and reminded of, honestly, guys, over the past couple of weeks, I have a lot of church family that's a lot closer than blood family. Yeah. And I'm not trashing on my blood family. I love them to death. But I see a lot of you guys way more than I see them. Yeah. And quite frankly, I know what's going on in a lot of your lives a lot more than I even know what's going on with them. Right? So this isn't about I'm not really making a distinction other than to say, God put us in from the very, very beginning, like it's not good that you're alone. I'm going to surround you with family. Right? And so it's important that we are able to kind of be iron against iron sometimes and be able to grind each other a little bit and be able to come up to each other and go, look, you know that I love you, but you're going to have to reconsider this. This is not a good idea. Like, you got to think about how this is affecting people or your kids or whatever it is. We have to be able to do that without being offended at each other. Yeah, sometimes you have to deal with it. And sometimes you have to face stuff. But it is love that is going to come to you sometimes and say, hey, look, we do have a problem here. We got to straighten this out. We got to fix this, right? As parents, if you're a parent, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Because there's sometimes you have to deal with it with your kids. You have to. You don't just sit back and go, oh, that was just a bad decision. They probably won't do that again next time. As a parent, you're going to make darn well sure they don't make that mistake again next time because you need them to understand how bad that was. Yeah. Right? Yeah. All right. So let us consider one another. Just stop and think. Just stop and perceive. How is my life going to affect the person next to me? How are my habits and the choices I'm making, how does that affect the people around me? Am I pulling them up to love? Am I pulling them up to good works? Or am I helping to be a weight on their life and helping to drag them down and pull them into stuff that they shouldn't be doing? Right? Verse 25, and then it says, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. Do you see how the writer of Hebrews here is tying in together the ability for us to kind of encourage one another and strengthen each other with our ability to assemble or our ability to gather, our opportunity to gather. See, we don't have the opportunity to really help each other and strengthen and encourage each other unless we do what? Get together, right? So what he's saying is let's stir each other, let's encourage each other, let's build up each other in love, let's build up each other in good works. But let's make sure that we don't forsake how important it is getting together and assembling and tying ourselves together. Look, one of the things that I want to, or that I'm so thankful for, especially when you go through stuff and you go through hard times in life. I told Brittany this the other day. We were talking about when we were at the funeral. It was amazing to me how there were so many people I knew. There was probably over 350 people who came, and I probably knew 90% or more of the people who were in there, and at least knew them by their face or something. But anyways, it was amazing to me how there would be people come through the line, and I'd give them a hug or shake their hand, and I was fine. And then other people would come through the line, and I felt like bursting into tears. And I'm like, why is it that I reacted so strongly to some people and not to to others. And Brittany and I got to talking with some of the names that happened with, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, like, you know what? I have always loved that person. I have always felt connected to him. Even though I maybe don't see him a lot, when I saw him, my heart just went out to him. It's like we've been best friends forever. I just haven't seen him in a while, right? And so when you have those kinds of relationship and God ties your heart together, that's the whole point of what he's trying to do, is to tie our hearts together so that we actually mean that much to each other. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing when we can look each other in the eye and we can say, I love you, and mean it. You do know in one of Paul's letters, he actually wrote to the church, and he said at the very end, he said, greet one another with a holy kiss. Now, you don't hear that preached a lot in the American church, and I guess if we instituted that here, we'd probably have some people like, yeah, let's give that a shot. Probably some other people would be like, no, that's okay. I'm not really down with that stuff right now. But I'm sure we'd have a mixed bag. Maybe we should take a vote. No, I'm kidding. Let's not. Although I'd be really curious to see how that one goes. But Paul said, greet one another with a holy kiss. Remember, notice there he said a holy kiss. I'm thankful he at least said that. But I want you to see that's how affectionate that it was supposed to be, how close the relationship was supposed to be, that it wasn't just oh, hey, I know you, we go to the same church together. It was supposed to be affectionate, and it was supposed to be intimate, and it was supposed to be passionate in the way that we cared about one another. That's why in a verse like this, he says, let us consider one another. Guys, I don't make any decision in my life ever without my wife involved. Ever. Because this isn't about me. This is about us, right? That's why I don't make decisions, and I can't. This is something that I have learned forever ago. I don't know why I've never taught it, but I've learned forever ago that the things that I do, somebody's watching. And it's going to affect other people, and it always, always does. I had a lady come up to me at the funeral, actually, and she said, I want you to know that I just spent today kind of watching you. And I was like, oh, boy. Because I know her. She's a sweet little old lady, and we've known her for a long time, but she came up to me and said, I was watching you today, and she goes, you know, there aren't a lot of people that I can look at. She's like, you're just comforting everybody, and you're just loving on people. And she goes, you know, it just feels genuine when you do it. And I was like, well, I appreciate it. And we wanted to talk for a little bit. But my point isn't about like, oh, look what I did. My point is that somebody's always watching. I was in a room full of 350 people, and somebody was watching me. But at the same time, guys, I'm telling you, I don't care how many people in your life, there are people watching you. They're watching you. Whether you're good, bad, or ugly, I'm telling you that people are watching, especially when you put it out there on Facebook. I mean, I'm telling you, there are people who are watching, and when they see the goodness of God, and they see the grace and the mercy of God in the midst of a storm, I am telling you, you may never know that happened, but one day you will find out. People are watching. If you're a parent, your kids are watching. If you're an aunt or an uncle, guess what? Your nieces and your nephews, they're watching. I know that's some of you are laughing and some of you are kind of sober, but honestly, I want you to understand, like, this is how important this is. People are watching. That's why I need to consider you. That's why you need to consider the church family. You need to consider your family and the people around you. That's why it's so important that we stir each other to love and to good works. That's why it is so important. I'm going to jump pretty much to the end here. So just a couple other thoughts I wanted to get in here in just a minute. We don't need to turn there, but if you want a reference to maybe look at this, there's two places in the book of Acts, Acts 2:44 and Acts 4:32, where it says that the church in that day, that the people basically would sell their possessions or whatever it took to make sure that the needs were met inside the church. Now, I'm not saying necessarily that that's how we need to do it. They had a very specific historical situation that they were confronting here during this time. But the point is more so that oftentimes when you are in a body of believers, it's the body that heals and helps itself, right? And so when we have the ability, sometimes you just don't even know what it means to someone to give them a hug, or you don't really know or understand what it means to give them a $5 bill or a $20 bill or whatever it is. Sometimes you just don't really know and understand. But what the early church in the book of Acts understood is that if I have the ability to help you, believe me, I will. Yeah. Right? So I want you to, I'm going to kind of wrap this up here, but I want you to understand how important it is and how vital it is that we communicate to one another how much we love each other, and how important it is for us to communicate to each other how important we are to each other. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't ever have fun and that things are always somber and sober. Are you kidding me? We should have, I've said this in youth forever, ever since I started. When it comes time to have fun, I want you to have fun like it's nobody's business. I want you to have so much fun you can't hardly stand it. But when it comes time to worship, I want you to worship with that same intensity. When it comes time for you to love on somebody, I want you to do it with the same intensity. I want you to live life in every aspect that God created, getting the absolute most out of it. But part of that is actually going to be us going to one another at times and saying, I want to just tell you that I love you, I appreciate you, and I'm glad you're in my life. Guys, I can't tell you how important that is. We do our covenant meal for our family on Christmas Eve, and it's been a little bit different because the family's been growing and growing, but during the course of that time, we would tell each other how much we love each other, and the things that we like about each other and all this kind of stuff. And it can be a little awkward if it's not something that you're used to, but why in the world is that awkward? That should not be an awkward thing for me to be able to go to you and tell you, I love you, and I appreciate you, and what you did for me really meant a lot, or that really touched my heart, or I appreciate you taking the time to be here, or whatever the case might be. So I just want you to know how important it is that we actually do go out of our way sometimes to acknowledge and to love on each other. I know we're going to irritate each other. God knows we're going to irritate each other. We're going to get mad at each other. We're probably going to get offended at each other. I'm probably going to get sick of looking at your face. You probably get sick of listening to me preach. But I'm hoping that in the middle of all that, we can just be iron rubbing against iron and help to fix and sharpen each other. So my last thought. I want you to just understand that the more that we learn to show love, the more that we are actually communicating with the people around us, the Father's heart. His heart has always been to love. His heart has always been good. And one of the biggest reasons why churches and Christians have struggled over the last at least probably century or so is because we're preaching a God that isn't love. And people from the outside looking in are like, you guys don't even like each other, let alone love each other. You're fighting. And when you have a disagreement, well, I disagree with Pastor, so everybody who's with me, we're going to go start our own Grace Church, and we're going to let Pastor keep his little thing, right? We have been a part of this where it's like, wait, you don't believe in this one specific thing? Oh, we're out. That's why people look at the church and go, you guys are crazy, because you know what, kind of, frankly, they are. And we have been, because we find things to fight about as opposed to finding ways to reconcile. So instead of me loving in the middle of any kind of do you know that there are people that we've had in this pulpit that believe things that we don't totally agree with? Some of them we may not have back again, but they've been here. No, did you know that if we really started digging into a lot of stuff, I probably don't believe everything exactly like you do. You probably don't believe it exactly like Pastor does. You probably don't believe it exactly like Apostle Jamie does, right? And that's okay. It's all okay, because at the center of the story is Jesus and the Father's love, right? So the more that we can communicate and the more that we can show each other that love, the better job we start doing of actually showing who the Father is, because that's what Daddy does. That's what He's like, right? That's always been His heart, was to show love. His heart has never been to have a family that has a bunch of division and fights among the kids. Right. Again, if you're a parent and you have more than one child, and you see little divisions and fights happening, you can ask my kids this. I will tell them this all the time. We will not do that. Yep. When they start bickering and arguing at each other, usually it starts by Dad stepping in and going, do I need to solve something? And most of the time the answer is no, because they've learned. But early on, does dad need to solve something? And they'll be like, well, he did this and she did that. And they're pointing at each other. I'm like, stop. We will not do this. And it's not just them. I won't either. Right? Because I've got to be the good example in the middle of this. I'm not going to pick sides and go, you did this? Oh, let's rail on her. I'm not doing this either. Right? But that's how Father also is. He's not interested in about all the little quabbles and fights and stuff that we have going on. Instead, it's almost like Father's like, do I need to settle something? You guys need to love each other. Like, that would solve a lot of things, actually, wouldn't it? But sometimes that's kind of how we act. And it's okay, we're all growing. But I'm going to leave you with this thought, is my love for you and my love for the Father should be the strongest driving force in my life. I don't care how important you think your whatever is that is in your life. It's something that you feel is important, but something that you may have going on in your life, if you don't stop and consider how it affects the people around you, it's time that you do. Because the love that I have for the Father and the love that I have for you should be the motivating force in everything that I do. It should be. That should be the single greatest motivation you've got. Right? As a parent, why do you go to work? To provide for your family, right? To provide for your kids. Why do you do that? It's not because you like it. It's not because it's fun. Pretty much guarantee you that. You do it because that's what you need to do to provide. That's a way that you show love, is by providing, right? So, with your family and with your church family and your friends around you, what is it that you do? What motivates what you do? Well, it should be, because this is what I need to do to show love. Sometimes that's a good place to start. Sometimes we start with what we need to do, and then it turns into a want to do.
It's true.
Sometimes it's hard to maybe give in the offering, or maybe sometimes it's hard to get out of bed early to come and to be a part of something. Maybe it's hard to do something that's out of your normal schedule, but eventually when you watch God start giving you grace for it, and your heart starts to connect, all of a sudden, you're like, are you kidding me? I wouldn't do anything other than this. Right? Guys, I'm talking a lot of this stuff just out of my own experience too, because I can tell you that I may not be the oldest person in the room, but I've done this for a while. And I've also been very fortunate that when I've had people in my life that have called stuff out, my wife being one of them. And I have had times in my life where the Holy Spirit has called me out on stuff, and like, I don't want to deal with this. It's like, well, kind of too bad. Hey, look, if you haven't had any of those moments, you need them. I'm just saying. Like, they're super not fun, but you need them. So, anyways, I want to encourage you, guys, the community, your family is so vitally super important that this isn't about just don't take them for granted. We need to acknowledge how much we love. And we need to let that love really be a driving force and motivating force in what it is that we do and the decisions that we make and how we talk to each other and how we treat each other in the way that we move forward in life, that I'm doing it in a way that I can bring you with me. And we can do this all together, and we can walk in love and peace and unity. And if we get on each other's nerves, it's fine. It's all part of life, right? So a couple of things that I want to do to end today is number one, I would like everybody, here in a minute, to gather around and pray over our family. This is something Pastor Cindy had mentioned, and our family could just use it right now. So I'm going to do that here at the very end. So after we do this next part, I don't want you to run away, because I do want you to jump in on that if you will. Kathy, I know I see your hand up. I didn't forget. Which you might as well, if you can, short version, if you can do it right now, let's just do it. So go ahead. I know what she wants to say, so go ahead.
Thank everyone for all the prayers and donations and labor and everything to get my car back on the road, and even put gas in it. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know she wanted to say that last week, and it was kind of, I don't know that it was the right time, but this is definitely a good time. It's a good sense of community too, of sorts, because that's what we are here for, right? So, as we wrap this up, I know that was a little somber, but in this basket I've got a bunch of names. If you're an adult, your name is in here, and we have. Isn't this super appropriate for Valentine's Day? I'm super hoping that a guy wins this. I'm just being honest with you. I'm just hoping that a guy wins this. But what it is I'm not going to open it, but it's two $25 gift certificates. It's like a dinner and a movie thing. I think it's for Olive Garden and then Fandango is what it is. So if you don't have plans for Valentine's Day, then maybe if you win this, you're going to have to make plans for Valentine's Day or sometime this weekend. So I think what I'm going to do is Reagan, is my name in here? I can't reach in here. Danae, you're the only, you know what? Olivia, you can come up here. Okay, so if you have, here's the deal. You have to show me first, because if you pull Ty's name out of here, we'll have to do something fun, different.
Yeah.
See, like, let's see. Oh, there's Aaron, and Bob, Stephanie. Yeah, they're all in here. Yeah, I was just making sure it wasn't Reagan. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's a Sherry. That was nice of her. Yeah. I'm not really putting anybody's name on the bottom on purpose.
I'm going to pull from the bottom now.
So, all right. I think these are pretty well mixed up. So, all right. Go ahead and pull one out of there. Just one. What'd you get? Do you want to say it, or do you want me to?
I don't know how to
She's not even in here.
Ha!
No. Kaylee, can you hear me? She's probably upstairs. There's footsteps. Can you hear? Yes, you. Guess what? You just won. You gotta come. You gotta come on. Well, we're gonna have to. Well, come on down here, though. We gotta give this to you. It is. Well, I'm sure that you could find somebody. I bet you if you like just stand right there or something, somebody would be more than happy to join you. But so you can verify my winner if you want. Yeah, you're welcome. And that's something that we can do as a church family to bless. I wish we could do that stuff more, but we got to do it at least every so often. So anyways, let me just pray over everybody here. I want to just bless you guys today. And then again, before you leave, if you don't mind, I just want to I'm going to have my wife come on up here and just gather around and pray over us as well. So let me pray and bless you here. So Father, thank you for today. We thank you for this opportunity that we have to come and to encourage one another, to strengthen one another, to bless one another. And Father, we thank you that you've given us the ability and you've given us the opportunity to do just that. We thank you that you truly have shown us how to love. You've shown us what family and what community looks like. And so, Father, I pray that in our own families, in our own group of friends, and Father, even in our church family, that you would help us to better understand how to communicate the love that we have for one another and how much we mean to each other and how important each one of us are. So, Father, I thank you today that you are loving on us and you're blessing us. And we thank you for the things you've called us to. We thank you for providing. Thank you for healing. Thank you for doing all the things that you promised in your word that you would do. And Father, I pray today that your people would be blessed, that they live in your grace and your mercy and your favor every day of their lives. Father, we thank you for them in Jesus' name.